Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 3 of Peacemaker. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're pretty much picking up, we're actually skipping over some stuff, because apparently we're just not going to, they talk about it, but it's like, I got this little spaceship thing, and that's it. Like, this big, weird thing happened, small, weird thing happened. We're going to mention it, but we're not going to dive into it because we're too busy trying to kill the senator. And that kind of takes precedence and priority over everything. And I love that it's like, this thing that I was doing, I got it from a woman who really had sex with me. And she came 4 times. It's just like, nobody asked like that. He's like, I'm sorry. I just felt the need to try and slip it in there. It's like, wanted to make it seem, I thought I was being super subtle about how I was slipping it in there, about just how I made her come 4 times and stuff like that. It's just, once again, we know how vulnerable he can be, that he's overcompensating because he feels the need to be kind of like a macho man. It's actually interesting because him and Myrn are kind of like that, because Myrn and John actually had a conversation where it's like, I'm telling you how I'm feeling. That must be a big deal. He's like, no, it is. I never tell people how I feel. It's like, you never felt this? Nope. You ever felt chilly? He's like, chilly? Is chilly a feeling? He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, well then no. You've never felt chilly? He's like, no. He's like, basically, he was just the type of person that would just never tell anyone how he felt. He would just, he talks about it a little bit. We still haven't, we know that Peacemaker knows something about his past, but he's done stuff that he's not proud of, and that everything he's doing is for the betterment of I'm going to try and make up for the bad I've done. Because we still don't know how he met up with Waller. We got insight into how Harcourt found her way to Waller, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But it's just kind of them lock and loading and getting ready to go kill this senator. And obviously I love Vigilante showing up, and he's just been like, hey buddy, and it's just get away from here. And they're like, isn't that murdering dude? And it's just he's like, I'm getting out of here. And she's just telling him to leave, and he was just like, I was going to leave until you said that, so now I can't leave because it's gonna make me seem small. And I it's like everyone's kind of got that machismo thing, Myrn as well as Peacemaker as well as Vigilante, of it basically comes to, I ain't no bitch. It seems like that's the antithesis of a lot of the characters in the show. I ain't no punk. You ain't gonna punk me out. I'm big, I'm strong, I'm tough. Everyone, because even Myrn was going on about that, do you want me to get you a blanket, John, or something like that? He said, I would say stuff like that, but now I'm more open and willing to be hey, so it's I've never actually felt this way before, but I thought it was appropriate to show that I have made progress and that I am willing to open up. So it's just interesting, just that they've set that up with, to be fair, I think even Harcourt has it a little bit herself, of just kind of how not very approachable she can seem, at least at sometimes. But I think it's right. I think everyone here amongst these groups have their respective defense mechanisms to make sure that they can do the jobs that they do. I love a little insight into Peacemaker, is that he has to he needs his weapons branded with the dove of peace, and he's like, no, I can't, he's like, I got it on my swords, my guns, and everything, and it's there was no time to get it engraved on this. It's what you want us to do, stop by a shop, so draw it on yourself. He's like, every time I do it, it turns out looking like a ghost, and he draws it, he's just like, fuck. I just love that it's the brand means something to him. It's no, everything I use, because I guess in a way it's right, if I got the dove of peace on it, then that means this weapon symbolizes with every kill I use it for. That's something I'm I'd love to go back and rewatch the Suicide Squad and see if that's actually on a lot of the weapons he has. Will they even, once again, it's James Gunn. If I remember, I'm trying to think. I think he might have wrote this before he wrote the Suicide Squad, or was it he wrote this while he was still, I forgot, it was a lot of almost at the same time thing of doing Peacemaker, not filming wise, I don't think. I think it was more so writing wise. I think he had written them not simultaneously, but it was something. I don't want to butcher it. It was something, because I could have sworn I remember, I thought he wrote this before he wrote Suicide Squad, but maybe that's not the case. I don't know. because I'm curious, like, if the little details, like, when you watch this show, I'm sure it is all James Gunn, so he's probably crafting it in a way that you could go back and watch Suicide Squad with context of what awaits him in the future, while also giving you even more insight to the character, so that you can go back and it adds even more, maybe add more subtle elements to Peacemaker's character. Maybe it's just like supplementary things that, because obviously this story takes place after, so you can't really take advantage of it unless it's just like supplementary stuff that like was sprinkled in there that you kind of get fuller context for in the show, but you can now like trace back in the movie to be like, oh, that they're like, for example, if he has the Dove of Peace specifically on every one of his weapons, you know? And I feel so bad for Adebayo when like she's showing off pictures of like the senator they're trying to kill. It's like, right, here's him and his entire family. They're mainly meant to kill the husband because he might be a butterfly, but his family potentially is too, and so it's going to turn into a situation of, right, you're going to have to wipe them all out, which he's not too happy about. Even Harcourt, it's like, oh, didn't you say, weren't the whole thing about you instilling peace being that you are willing to kill any man, woman, or child? And he's like, yeah, sure, he just wants to make sure. And I'm like, he says all that, but once again, maybe it's a thing of he's overcompensating because, well, we know he's not like his dad, which I love that conversation with Vigilante really quickly, where Vigilante was like, right, oh, if any of these are your best friends, because I forgot that was a whole, I didn't talk about it last episode, but that was a whole conversation about, like, he's like, I'm your best friend. He's like, you're not my best friend. He's like, who is it? Like, one of the people you work with? And he's like, he was like, if you get friendly with anyone, I say her, and kind of points out Adebayo, because it's like, right, the word's kind of spreading around that you're a racist, and that kind of makes me a racist by association. So like, I'd want you to clean up your image, so it's okay. It's like, I'm fine being known as a murderer. He's even like, I kill mainly white people anyway. So like, I love his justification. Like, how can I be racist? I kill white people. Like, it's of that same ilk in text of like, yeah, that's how you compensate for not being. I mean, to be fair, Peacemaker did the same thing of like, no, I kill white people too, so I can't be racist. It was almost that thing, but. Like, the point I was making, though, is, like, I think he's overcompensating. So, like, part of me is like, have you never actually killed a woman or child before? Like, have all your targets always been men? And you're like, oh, like, I'm willing to do, like, because you're trying to be like, yeah, I'm all about peace. This is how dedicated I am to my mission. Like, are you overcompensating? Because, like, when the time came, he couldn't pull the trigger on some kids. I mean, it just... I think what stopped him before is because it's like the senator has an entire family, so him being with his kids, and it's like, right, I'm about to pop the dad, but it's going to be in front of his kids. That's all kinds of jacked up. Because I think it's also like, it's probably instilled from like, right, his circumstances connected to his dad. Like him and Harcourt ended up bonding over the fact is that both of their dads are kind of why they are where they are right now. So maybe on some symbolism of like, oh, here's a guy being an actual good dad, and I had my kind of bastard of a dad, so it makes him feel a little weird, and just like, I don't know. It could be a combination of many different things, but it could just simply be like he's never killed children before, and he's just overcompensating. But circle back to it because I brought it up, but I didn't finish the thought. Was Adebayo like feeling bad for her because she was scrolling through stuff, and apparently her wife sent her something. It's like, right, because of the whole thing of like, oh, trying to get her wife to leave so she's not in danger, and it's like, right, because of that they wanted to try some intimacy stuff, and she sent me this, and even it was a whole thing about like, you have to change your settings so stuff like that doesn't kind of get sent. So it's just kind of like, right, everyone saw it, and I love that. It's like, yeah, of course he has his perspective of like, no, like, I'm an ally in all of this. It's like, just because you watch a lot of like lesbian porn or whatever, or no, what was it? Basically this, he's like, oh, you should look at my porn history to know like how much of an ally he is. But she's like, just because you have a lesbian haircut doesn't mean you're an ally. But I do like that Harcourt and Peacemaker did kind of have a little bit of a bonding moment. Obviously, she shares some of her like trail mix or whatever with him, and he put some of it back. He's like, those are empty carbs, and just ate. It's like, oh, I love how, because I almost expected him to put almost everything back, but the fact is he got some. It's like, oh, it's a sweet moment. He's like, I'm gonna put that back. I'm gonna put this back. Yeah, But then he also shared his drink with her and stuff like that. It's one of those captivating moments and music's playing. He's looking at her and it's just like, oh, this is like a really sweet moment, which I love that Vigilante was kind of like, oh man, that was a really sweet conversation and stuff like that. And he's hiding in the bushes and it's like, because everyone can hear him over the comms and it's like, what is he doing? Like, what is he trying to be a talking bush? He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, come out already. We know you're there. But it was like a very nice moment of them kind of opening up. She explained like her dad putting a gun in her hand when she was 12. She worked with the DEO, then she worked with Argus, and that's where Waller found her. I'm curious who runs Argus in this continuity, since it's not apparently Waller. Because some continuity she has ties to Argus, like in Arrow, for example, she was the head of Argus. So I'm curious, like, who's the head of it? Maybe that's come up in this. I mean, once again, the complaint people have, like, yeah, what is continuitous in this continuity? That's a whole conversation in itself, but still. And then we kind of got insight into this butterfly thing. We immediately got some answer, basically being like some kind of like, I didn't know what it's like, what is this supposed to be, like a parasite or something? Because we saw them like drinking this goop and like these tentacles or something comes out in their mouth and just like, right, pop them. But when the time came, like Peacemaker could. It's like, great, we got a killer that can't kill. Which is like, we know he can kill. And it's like, I'm trying to like, well, because it's not like, well, he did kill. Granted, that was in self-defense, which is interesting. His first kill of the series is in self-defense. Like, obviously, like, him and Bloodsport were, like, ripping through people left and right. I mean, well, I think it's also, like, you have to think about it, too. Like, this is his first... Those were his first kills post-killing Rick. Because he was going to kill... he's going to kill Ratcatcher, and then, like, him and Bloodsport had their shoot-off, and he lost. But it's like, yeah, like, Rick is the last person he killed prior to episode 1, and once again, even that situation wasn't, like, him actively going out of his way to murder. It was him, it was in the self-defense. But I'm curious, like, is that Rick thing having a bigger effect on him? Obviously, it still stings, it still affects him because, you know, it's once again, he prides himself on being a hero, and when the time, like, came, he ended up killing someone who was a good guy in all intents and purposes, you know, so... I did like that Myrn made a point to say, like, right, I'm not Amanda Waller. We're not just going to kill people indiscriminately or something. And you see Adebayo, like, kind of turning her head, like, yeah, because I guess she knows who her mom is and probably some of her mom's reputation, but to hear people talk about her mom like that, because I guess she's never potentially seen the side of her mom that other people have and seen what she's capable of, what she's ordered people to do. So, I'm curious about. Because time and time again, she keeps coming to her mom's defense, being like, nah, it's not my mom. It couldn't be my mom. It's like, even though, like, we as the audience know, like, how vicious and how wild your mom can be, and so do they. Like, how, like, she's a no-nonsense lady. If something needs to get done, it's going to get done. So... But maybe it's also, like, once again, maybe you turn blinders on as her child, or maybe she actively... puts blinders on you so that you don't see her for kind of who she really is. She doesn't want to taint their relationship in any shape or form, so maybe she hides a lot of the darker elements of what she does. Because it seems like Adebayo has like an idea of what she does, but not like the full extent of who Amanda Waller is, you know? But when it came down to the kill itself, Vigilante's the one that stepped in and just showing you how much of a psycho he is. He's just humming to himself like, yeah, ooh, pop, pop, pop. But when it came time for the Papa Bear to go down, Judo Master stepped in and proceeds to kick some serious ass. Because when I saw him initially, I'm like, his outfit, because he's in the intro, I didn't know who the hell he was supposed to be. Because the moment I saw him, like, his outfit reminds me of TKO's. So that's why I was kind of like, is there some correlation there? But no, he's just really good at martial arts and proceeds to kick both Vigilante and Peacemaker's ass. Poor Vigilante, when Peacemaker ended up, like, getting the knife, like, kicked in his hand and making him stab Vigilante. And I love Vigilante. It's like, all right, you won fair and square, I'm gonna leave. And he's just like, I can't believe you actually tried to, like, run away from it and he wouldn't let you and he knocked you out. That was pretty crazy. Just, like, punch, punch, punch. Even your helmet wasn't enough to block all that and stop you from not getting knocked out. So, they ultimately end up getting captured, so that sucks. Adebayo ends up not shooting the guy when Harcourt is like, no, like, shoot this guy, he's seen our face, which immediately I'm like, hey, McNabb from Psych. That's always, when I see that actor, I'm always going to think that. And there was something else he was in fairly recently that I was like, hey, I recognized him he was in something else. I think he was playing a somewhat bad guy in something else, but he's like, they're pleading for his life. Oh, I've been married for so long, I've got kids and stuff like that. It's like, well, we don't know if he's a butterfly, but she believes that he's not one, but Harcourt is like, it doesn't matter, he's seen our face, this is supposed to be a hush-hush operation, so she ends up killing him, and Adebayo has never killed anyone. It's like, well, you're keeping your streak alive. So I also love there's a whole Berenstein and Berenstain. Like, I have no idea because I've not read those books in so long, and I don't have a good enough memory to be like, oh, it was definitely this. It's like, no. I even love the whole thing of, like, even Mern steps in being like, it's this. And it's like, no, I don't mean to question you, sir. It's like, shut up. Stop talking. Because, like, is this important? And it's like, no. And I love that he made that point, and then he immediately joined in on the conversation. But she sends over one to John, and he was like, oh, this is a pretty good Photoshop. And she's like, it's not Photoshopped. Yeah, I love that whole torture sequence. Well, first and foremost, I love Judo Master just kind of being a dick. And it's just kind of like, Peacemaker being like, oh, give me some of those Cheetos. He's like, oh, you want these? He's like, yeah. And he throws them, and he's like, ow, okay, I get it. Ow, what the hell did they put in those Cheetos? But I love the torturing scene because it seems so backwards that he's torturing Vigilante to get Peacemaker to talk. And I love that he starts morphing. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, as long as I keep changing my face like this, he'll never be able to properly identify me when it comes to a lineup. It's like, he's not the type of guy, which I think is stupid of you to do, because he's not going to know, like, once he gets whatever information he thinks, he's going to kill you. He's not going to turn you over to police and be like, oh, this is the guy. It's like, no. But I guess on the off chance you escape, then maybe. But it seemed like he'd most likely come and kill you rather than you just, rather than letting the cops get their hands on you or whatever. But I love the whole, him getting tortured thing, and he's just like, no, go ahead, do whatever you want to, ramp it up. I love them. Like, that's so, it's easy for you to say. That's the messed up thing of like, right, rather than torturing you and to get the information, he's torturing Vigilante. And even him saying like, right, you're the alpha in this situation, so I'm gonna torture him because that way you're humans, we're empathetic. Well, you're empathetic, so that's like your weakness. And he's like, don't worry, buddy, I'm not gonna tell him anything. And then Vigilante's like, wait, what? You can tell him a little bit. I was like, I love that. He's just like, yeah, like, it's a, which I guess that's also supposed to be irony behind it. He's like, right, just in case John, damn it, I'm doing it again. In case Peacemaker gets tortured, he's like, oh, like, you know, I don't want you to know my secret identity because people might use it. And it's like, oh, ironically enough, you're the one being tortured this time to get information out of Peacemaker. I think, obviously, that was done on purpose to flip the script on that conversation they had in episode 2. But I even love that at one point he starts trying to cut off his toe, but it won't cut all the way. He's like, because all your fucking blades are dull. Like, don't you keep up with your keep your torture devices and stuff like that, like, properly, like, set and ready? It's like, wow. And it's just like they cut back to it, and I love Peacemaker's kind of throwing up a little bit because the toe isn't completely cutting off, and you're like, ah. Because I was almost expecting them to kind of stop before it's like, oh, but no, the knife is so dull that it's cutting through part way, not all the way, but it still makes your skin crawl a little bit. Poor Vigilante, because he was like, no, I need my pinky toe. He, like, it completely takes off your balance. And I guess, you know, considering his skills and everything, it's like, right, balance is kind of important to you. So I'm wondering, is that going to affect him going forward in the show, not having that pinky toe. Love at the same time the squad gets together and they're trying to track down Peacemaker, even save him, and there's like they found the secret passage, but it's blocked. And I love that Mern is like, right, here's an explosive device from like Argus or whatever, and then she licks it and it's like, why are you licking it? She's like, I thought it was like an envelope that you kind of have to lick it. They're like, no, you just peel it off and you just stick it. I love it. And at first when it didn't activate, and they never had this conversation, but I'm like, is it because Adebayo like licked it? Did that screw up so that the signal didn't reach? But the moment he stood up, I was like, please don't do it. And he's walking close. I'm like, don't do that, Mern, don't. He's like, well, I guess. And it explodes, and he's just like, no, I'm good. So they're going after John and Vigilante. All the while this is happening, Judo Master was getting away, and he was going to let everyone know what was what. And so John got on the case and rammed the dude's car, and he's crawling away, and John's like beating him over the head. But I love the whole like beats him over the head, he still keeps crawling, beats him over the head, keeps crawling. He's like, come on, pow, pow, pow. He's like, okay, you're out this time. And then later on, he's kind of dancing over his body. I'm like, God. He's like, yeah. Definitely feeling himself. I'm like, yeah, I did this. Good thing too. But the explosion from the device ended up freeing Peacemaker, so that ends up in a tussle. And I love that whole moment of him just like, peace out, motherfucker, and blows his brains off. I was like, Jesus. I don't know, sometimes it's just like when you see stuff, you're just like, I mean, this is the type of show, obviously we saw what happened with the first Butterfly, how graphic that got when she got reduced to viscera. I don't know why I'm so shocked, but it's just like, it just throws me off sometimes when I'm like, I just don't expect things to be as hardcore as they are sometimes, but it's like, should have figured as much. I was wondering, considering it was only like the top half of his head, I was like, is that actually enough to kill him? I was like, is this zombie rules? But technically it's not, because the butterfly comes out, which immediately he's like, Project Butterfly. So it's like, right. So it is so he's like, right. So it is straight up what it is. I'm like, it is interesting. It makes you wonder, like, why does the U.S. government do what it does? You know, the fact is that we had Project Starfish. It was about a starfish. To be fair, it was about an alien starfish. So what about these butterflies? Are they alien butterflies? Or are they like mutated butterflies, metahuman butterflies? Like, I guess this is about some like hive mind thing. Like, is someone controlling all of them? Well, because we know like Starro sent out like he could control people's minds. Granted, once he did, there was no fighting it. Once you're under control, like that's it. Which is ironic considering like maybe they're trying to bring Peacemaker into that, because remember he was already quote unquote dead at the well, at least out of commission before that final fight with Starro. So he missed out on the kaiju battle. So maybe this is supposed to be a little bit of makeup for that. But it seems like it might be a similar thing, as because once Starro took control of you, there was no separating it. The only way to free you was to kill you. So it seems like, because Starro's on the outside controlling you, whereas these butterflies bury themselves inside. So it's very like, there's almost like some Men in Black-esque elements to it. Almost like some pod people, like elements as well, just like with what these things are. I'm curious to find out more about it. I also do like that now it's like, oh yeah, Peacemaker knows, it's like, wait, aren't you Gut Chase's younger brother? It's like, yeah, what is your name again? Adrian. He's like, right. He's like, yeah, I mean, look at you, Gut. And then like you put on like you're in pretty good shape. He's like, oh, thanks. It's like, I mean, you're kind of slender, but it's like, yo, you definitely kind of like bulked up and stuff like that. You know, the benefits of having a very naturally good body. He's like, oh, thanks. So, that's good. You can tell though, like I'd say all that about like the torture and stuff like that, but it was affecting Peacemaker. Like, he did kind of feel bad. He feels a lot more, once again, I think it is because of the Suicide Squad that he is feeling a lot more than he has before, because I think the Suicide Squad was the first time he, like, even though he kept his distance, he still, like, it was a team. It was this cooperative effort that he kind of let his guard down for. Because even Ratcatcher, he didn't want to kill her, just like he didn't want to kill Rick. It was just like, I got my duties, and now that confliction inside of him is where he is now. So, but we see at the very, very end that there is a whole bunch of, it isn't just a US thing. These things are everywhere, on every continent around the world. So how you deal with something on such a large scale, probably have to kill the mother brain behind all of this. But where that is and what that is, we'll have to wait and see. I did like the little post-credits thing of like, right, him coming out of the bush, and it's like, right, if you fuck this up for us, I'll kill your entire family. He's like, ha, too late. So I don't know whether that was a thing of like, right, someone already else killed your family, did they die in an accident, or are you talking about you being a psychopath and you killed your family yourself? I was like, and him saying that was almost like, oh, haha, too late. Just like, oh, you can't use my family against me because they're already dead. But I didn't know which way he meant that. I'm assuming like, oh, someone else killed them, or maybe they just died in an accident. But I don't want to think the fact is that you killed your parents. Hopefully that's not the case. But I'm excited to continue the show. I'm assuming going forward from here is going to be week to week. I'm assuming one episode at a time. But you never know. Station 11 threw me for a loop with the whole like 2 episodes a week thing. So we'll see whether Peacemaker keeps that up or not. Because I think the people, I'm not well versed in this. I only know this because I've seen people reviews like Double Toasted. I didn't want to like watch anything or hear anything. I wanted to kind of go into this with just as little knowledge as possible, without any discussions around it. But I know like Double Toasted has already seen like I think the first 7 episodes. I think there's only 8 episodes. So I was like, oh, I feel like you never get like when you like watch enough like nerdy like people with connections and stuff like that who are able to review stuff earlier, like critics and stuff like that. You never hear about that much being given to them at once. It's usually like, oh, we got like maybe the first 3 episodes or something like that. It's never really like something to this extent. Like I saw like them like, oh yeah, review of episodes 1 through 7. I'm like, Jesus, I didn't know you got that many episodes. That's interesting. So, but like I said, I think there's only 8 episodes in the season, if I'm not mistaken. So, well, like I said, we'll see whether it's a week-to-week thing. I'll probably end up finding out after I end up uploading this, but regardless, I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. Lot of plot points set up. We're kind of like, because obviously we set up the whole thing with his dad and what that's all about, but we kind of left that alone. The little spaceship things, we set that up, we kind of left that alone. But I'm assuming that's obviously all going to tie back into these blue butterflies, so we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.